Hi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
Oh, excellent.
Yes. So, hello everyone. My name is Tiwalade Aderemi, and today I'll be with Dr. Reginald Aziza while he talks about corporate law practice in Nigeria, a career path, and work life. So, I'll first. Can you hear me now?
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay. So, I'll first introduce myself to Dr. Reginald Aziza. Hello, sir. My name is Tiwalade Aderemi, and I'm a law graduate from Olabisi Onabanjo University. I think it's a great pleasure to be on this session with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I'm interested in energy law, so I'm an energy enthusiast. So today I'll just be taking you through the questions, and you'll be providing relevant answers to the questions. So I'll first start with explaining the fact that me and every member of the team, we know who you are, and we know your exploits in academia and corporate law space. And we know they are quite tremendous, and you are definitely a force to reckon with in those areas. But for the benefit of doubt that someone in the audience doesn't know who you are, can you kindly introduce yourself, sir?
Okay, well, thank you very much, and good evening, good morning, everyone, depending on where you're joining from. I wouldn't go into a very lengthy introduction. My name is Reginald. I am currently an attorney with Chevron. I was called to the bar in 2013 in the period of worked in several places, law firms in Nigeria, London, and Paris, and was fortunate to complete further education in the UK, up to a doctoral degree. That's about it for me, and I know that in the promotional material that you have come up with, you had a lot more information to all that day. So that's about a short introduction of myself. Thank you.
Okay. We all know you. We know you are an erudite in this profession, and it's a great pleasure to have you join us this evening. So can you walk us through a typical day in your life as a corporate lawyer?
Well, thank you. I'm not sure there may be such a thing as a typical day.
Okay.
Like there's a lot happens, right? So I think depending on where you work in, if you are in-house, the assumption is that you have it a bit lighter than many of our colleagues who will be in law firm practice. But essentially, wherever you are, what you will ultimately be doing is providing legal advice to clients. And since it's corporate law practice rather than disputes or litigation, more specifically, you typically will have to have some business sense to the legal advice you provide to your clients, which will oftentimes mean that that's what the law in the book says, the textbook law says is one thing. It's an entirely different question oftentimes what's in your client's best interests. And for you, the point is not vindicating a legal right like you would do in a dispute setting. You're trying to help your client achieve an outcome. And so oftentimes that may mean that you have legal rights that you trade off to achieve other things. It could mean that in a broader business context, it is perhaps not pragmatic to pursue certain legal remedies. But what you're trying to do ultimately is putting yourself in a position of a business, a functioning business, and helping that business or the client in question get to the results that they want to get to, essentially.
Okay. Thank you so much for that answer. So my next question is, what would you describe as the ideal way to start your career in corporate law practice as a young lawyer fresh out of law school? Did you get the question?
I did, yes. And again, it's doubtfully if there's an ideal way. One challenge, of course, and I know this because I speak with young lawyers, people just finishing the law school, and all quite regularly. There are not so many commercial, if you like, law firms in Nigeria, right? If you look at the way practice is structured, you have commercial firms, primarily in places like Lagos, in Port Harcourt, Abuja, maybe to a lesser extent in a place like Kano up north. But for many other places around the country, what you find is practice that is dominated by property transactions and litigation, right?
Yes.
So I think usually to start off a career in corporate law, you probably want to be in these commercial nerve centers. And having gotten in there, you want to show your ability to relate with business issues rather than vindicating legal rights, like I mentioned earlier. And what that oftentimes means is doing or developing skills that are not necessarily legal, that help you understand economic trends, understand what's going on in the business space, how can certain things and policies and legal provisions, etc., affect a functioning business in this area, right? And you sort of start off from there. I guess for many people just coming out of the law school, for instance, you want to apply to some of these law firms. It's doubtful you would have many big companies that will hire in-house just straight out of the law school, right? So you probably want to develop some experience. The final thing I would say here is, even though you are unable to get into a big law firm, in quotes, early on in your career, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because ultimately, you do need to vindicate legal rights, and you do need to fight and shout and argue and bang tables, right? And maybe one thing where disputes background helps, is that you're now better able to sniff out legal risk, because you've seen a lot happen in practice resulted in this type of claim or dispute in the past, and you're then better able to shape your clients in the right direction. So wherever you are, I think keep building yourself there and keep sniffing for those opportunities, and usually you will get them at some point.
Okay. So on to the next question. It says, with the understanding that corporate practice is wide, can one specialize in an area of corporate law in isolation? So, for example, let's say I'm interested in mergers and acquisition or any area of corporate law practice at all. Do you think I can do so well focusing on that area of practice alone without having to cover the whole of corporate law practice?
Yeah, so you're breaking up for a little bit, but I think I got the gist of the question, which is, in effect, whether you can specialize in specific areas within the corporate law universe. And the short answer is, of course, yes. Corporate law is, my goodness, it is so broad that, in fact, it is, at some point in your career, it may not be sensible to describe yourself as a corporate lawyer, because there's so much going on in that space. Like you mentioned, you have M&As, you have financing, you have capital markets transactions, energy law, you name it, banking. There's so much going around: fintech, TNT, competition law. It's just all over the place. In actual fact, at some point in your career, particularly for people who will likely explore an international career, you may need to specialize, not just in terms of subject matter, but also in terms of jurisdiction. So if you're an international law firm, as an example, you probably will be syndicated financing for energy transactions in the Middle East. Is that type of specificity, right? Or public M&A listed companies in the UK. So you have a subject matter, and then you have a geographical focus, right?
Yeah.
Of course, in Nigeria, you probably don't need to have that sort of specificity, and that's largely because Nigeria right now is not a hub for the provision of legal services across either the West African sub-region or more across the continent. But specializations within the industry are not just possible. I think they're expected at certain points in your career. And to the extent you have an international outlay to that, you probably then want to also have a geographical focus as well.
Fine. So I was trying to explain the fact that personally, I have a few questions regarding what to do next after law school. Like, do I just go to a law firm or just start a postgraduate studies, just like every other persons do now? Some people will just finish from law school and, they'll get probably a scholarship and just go directly, for their master. So the question is, when would you say is the right time for a new wig to pursue their postgraduate studies?
So personally, this advice that I give quite often. There's no one size fits all answer. I think as a general rule, people will typically say you want to give yourself a few years so you know what it is you want to do, in fact, right? So the rule of thumb is typically finishing YSC and maybe do a year or two after that. And one advantage to that is you get into school for further studies. Given that you have some experience, you probably will be more competitive for jobs internationally if that is what you want to do.
Okay.
People, of course, have different views on what their next steps in life would be. So some people just want to leave Nigeria. I just want to leave Nigeria, right? What use does 2 years in a law firm in Port Harcourt to do to such a person, right?
Yes.
Some people are fortunately very strong competitors, which means that they get into one of the big universities in the world immediately and they have full funding, right? Why would I tell somebody who has a full scholarship to go to Oxford that they should wait back in Nigeria to do what? You have the admission, you have funding to Oxford. Why are you sitting down in Nigeria, as an example, right? So it's really difficult to have bright line rules and say, well, this is what's best without understanding what people's unique circumstances will be. I would think that if you are not one of these super top contenders, and you also don't have an immediate desire to leave Nigeria, you probably will want to wait a little bit. But I understand that that's not everybody. And I also understand that for some people, the analysis may favor leaving Nigeria almost immediately.
Okay. So I would like to ask that if I were to be interested in becoming like a lecturer, would your answer be different or would it still be the same? So if I want to be a lecturer, probably in Aberdeen University, and I'm done with my, with my law school, I'm now a lawyer, do I just go straight to run a master's or probably work with a law firm? So let me just get your opinion on that.
So for the academia, well, I think one key thing is practitioners, people who have previously been in practice, have unique perspectives that they bring to the classroom, which students oftentimes find to be very valuable, right? So you will not quickly discount the value that that practical experience would have in your teaching job. But remember that in the academia, you are judged based on your academic output, right? The academic output is primarily your publications. So if you want to climb up the ladder fairly quickly, you probably want to start that journey fairly quickly, right? And I know that one option a number of people take, well, people try different models. Some people try to merge both practice and lecturing. Some people start off in practice and will, at some point in their careers, consider going to the classroom. I think I'm one of such people. It's not an immediate goal to me, even though I have a PhD now, to get into a classroom, right? Some other people will start in the academia, get professorship early, and then break out, start off something with a view to being consultants, right? So again, it's a question of what model are you trying to implement for yourself. But as a general rule, your practical experience helps you in your teaching. It's not necessarily what gets you the academic job or what sustains you on that path.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. So the next question is there any synergy between becoming a corporate lawyer and an in-house counsel?
So I would interpret the word synergy to mean like an interconnection. In which case it is possible, and you see a lot of people starting off in corporate law practice, then eventually switching to in-house roles. I think that experience certainly does help because you have been grounded in providing business solutions to business people, in learning how to communicate legal points. So as an example, you would know not to write a 20-page legal opinion to in-house counsel like myself, because I'll sit down there looking at you like, what are you trying to do here? I need short answers to my question. Can you provide me with that, right? So it really gets you into the thinking of in-house counsel, and therefore it is very likely, and you oftentimes do see people who start off as corporate lawyers, then joining companies as in-house counsel.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. So my next question is, to understand the nitty-gritty of corporate law practice, what are the tips you can recommend to young lawyers?
I will probably sound like a broken record now, because I say this a lot of times. But you certainly need to understand economics at some basic level. You would need to understand how economic principles, policies, etc. affect business, and therefore how that possibly shapes actions that you should take, your company should take, actions that your counterparts may take, actions that regulators may take. It's understanding all that. One of the key things that you can do for yourself is really understanding that universe. I think that typically sets people apart, right? Another thing you can do, of course, is just expanding your knowledge base. So at some point in your career, to stand you apart, you probably will need to be more than just a lawyer. You probably will need to be a solution provider, the way to think about it is that at some point, what sustains your career are not necessarily legal skills, right? It's all the other things that comes to you. So it's sort of being technically sound as a lawyer, right? But you then transition into understanding business, understanding the politics, understanding possible regulatory actions and what motivates them, understanding steps taken by counterparties, understanding your team and how to help your team within your business achieve the types of results that it wants to achieve. You need to rely very heavily on relationships. You need to build them, cultivate them, maintain them. These then transition well beyond core legal work or core legal skills. So the earlier you start developing those, the better for you. And I think it just ultimately stands you apart as you progress up the ladder in your career. And it always helps, of course, to have mentors, people you look up to, people that can assist you in your journey, to be able to speak to people that can get you to where you want to be, right? So those are about some of the tips that I have on that issue.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Reginald. So my next question is, how has your experience, being as a corporate lawyer? Do you think you like it? Do you think you would like to do it over and over again?
Well, you see, back in university, I was a moots champion. I was traveling the country, debating, appearing in moots competitions, and I genuinely had thought to myself that I was going to be. I'll be 10 years at the bar next year. I would make my first application for SAN around that time, and that was the trajectory, right? And the first thing that discouraged me was going to court and sitting in court. So NYSC, right? You go into court and you're just a normal guy. So no car, nothing. Wake up in the morning very early, carry a wig and gown in your bag with your massive court files, and start looking for transport to take you to court. You get into court, sit down, and at some point, you hear the court's not sitting, and you're just like, sorry, excuse me, what do you mean, like the court's not sitting? And you have all my details, you have email address, phone number of myself, of my law firm, you have everything you ever need to inform me whether the court is going to sit, right? And that happens a number of times and you start getting disillusioned. And so for me, that was really how that journey started. And again, I was in a big commercial law firm. So it also helped that whilst all that disillusionment was going on in the dispute side, there was a lot of hardcore work that was thrown into immediately from a corporate law perspective. I think it's been very rewarding. I know that one big sacrifice to pay is that you don't have the Leonard Silk tag to yourself, right? But not everybody needs it. Not everybody needs it to achieve the goals that they set off for themselves in the profession. Of course, not to disrespect the ranking in any way. You really can be a solid lawyer even within the corporate law world. So I have enjoyed it. It's taken me to many places. I have closed billions of dollars in transactions multiple times over. It's been phenomenal for me. I wouldn't trade this where I am right now, right?
Okay, so is there anything you wish to change about your career or career path?
At the moment, no, actually. Um, it's been a good journey. Of course, the one thing that I could possibly tweak was the decision on taking a doctorate, right? Whether to take it at the time I did or not, because of course that would have had an impact on where I am right now. But the truth for me is that decision ultimately, I think, was a very solid one, because it just gives me an added card that I can play at some point in my career when the time comes, right? So I'm very happy with the journey so far. I wouldn't change much right now.
Okay. So, can you kindly share with us the other situation you faced as a corporate lawyer, and how did you resolve it?
The hardest situation. Well, I'm not sure there's like one situation. One key thing, of course, is just the deadlines, and how fast paced some things can get. You have, whether you are in house like I am right now, or you're working for clients, you sometimes have business deadlines that you must meet. Otherwise, things in other places start spiraling out of control, right? And that does come with a lot of pressure sometimes. For me, fortunately, I've always worked on the basis that that pressure is part of the game, and it's hard, it's difficult, but it's doable. And whatever effort needs to be put in place to achieve the results is what we're here for. Put in the effort, we'll get the results, right? So developing that sort of thick skin has been very good for me. It has helped me really to go ahead and do some of the things that I've done. So that has been the key challenge, I think. But so far it's been very manageable.
Okay, so when it also comes to family life and work life, do you think there are some times that probably, your family life overlaps with your work life? How do you handle situations like that?
I just pray and annoy my wife a lot, and see how I can make up for it. But yes, the pressures gets tremendous, and oftentimes, yes, I am simply unable to meet up with certain things that I would otherwise want to do, just because there are deadlines, there are things that must happen at certain points, right? I think one key thing there is as much as possible just explaining as clearly as you can what the future looks like, that these are things that must happen right now, and for that reason, I'm likely to have this level of availability within this period of time. And then when you are done with it, trying to make the conscious effort to then come back to the things that mean a lot to you. So for family life, as an example, if you then have spaces where you actually have time on your hands, ensuring that you can make your presence felt within those times, right? But it's not easy. I think it's useful for people to understand that it is not easy. It is challenging. It can get very difficult, right? Because sometimes the nature of the work is that you are putting in painful hours week in, week out for an extended period of time, right? It's not easy on you yourself. It's not easy on people around you who want more of your time and presence and attention, right? So don't trivialize that. Is one thing I would say, but within the context of what's available to you, you can use various tools to manage it and ensure that when you do have the time, you are actually very present in your family life.
Thank you. So, what would be your advice to lawyers that are passionate about leading a career in corporate law practice?
We talked earlier about some of the few tips that I had for what people can be doing right now. I don't have a monopoly of knowledge or wisdom in this space, so there's probably a lot more that people need to do that I'm not aware of or I haven't said. But the advice would be, well, two things. One is, wherever you are now, keep developing yourself, because as the saying goes, there's no such thing as wasted knowledge, right? You do have knowledge, and whatever knowledge you acquire just becomes helpful in some context at some point in your journey. So keep developing as much knowledge and experience as you possibly can now. The second thing I would say is the pathway to a good next job is to absolutely kill your current job, right? And so sometimes what people don't understand, and I have these conversations with people a lot of times, they're in places where they feel disillusioned. They want to go somewhere else, want to do something else. The current job is not rewarding, various things. And I understand it, right? The system is very hard for a lot of people, and that informs why I take on some of the causes and battles that I fight on a constant basis. But having said that, you have to realize that the reason you're doing your current job well is selfish to you. You're not doing it necessarily because of the pay or because of the recognition or any of that. It is that when you are then looking at going somewhere else, you have built that capacity in yourself that you can then demonstrate with very clear examples to somebody else, right? So you do not mess up your current job on the basis that it's not what you want. You do not go into your current job half-heartedly on the basis that you want to be doing something else. The current job you have, you absolutely smash it. And in the course of doing that, within a short period of time, you would have amassed a wealth of knowledge and experience such that when you have the chance to sit at the table to discuss another job, even though what you have been doing hasn't been your preferred job, you can demonstrate such capabilities that it will be difficult for somebody to pass you on, right? That's one thing that I would stress to many people who are looking at careers in this direction. If it's a litigation law firm in Anambra State, it's fine. They only do debt service in Ile-Ife. It's okay. It's fine, right? Keep looking for something better. Keep developing yourself. But you see your current job, absolutely smash it. No questions, no excuses.
Oh, I learned a lot from that, and I got to understand that one should at least, put in more effort in whatever it is or whatever situation they find themselves in. So it doesn't matter whatever job you are doing. The most important thing is you put effort. You show, you exude excellence in whatever it is that you are doing, and that's how you can, get better. So those are the words of Dr. Reginald Aziza. And we've come to the end of this session, and I want to say thank you to Dr. Reginald Aziza for the opportunity. But before we go, I'd like to tell Dr. Reginald Aziza to give us any words. Do you have?
Sorry, just want to ask if there are any questions from the audience, or did you plan for that? If there is.
Yes, but right now I've checked the question box, but we can just, wait for a few minutes to see if anyone has any question.
Yeah, we'll do it for like 2 minutes. If there are any questions, then we can start aiming to wrap up.
So if anyone has any question, please feel free to ask. But while the question section is going on, can you just give us a parting word, both a parting word that would apply to both undergraduates, graduates, people in the Nigerian law school, and even young lawyers?
Well, you've asked something similar previously, and that's what I thought I was doing with the last question, which was any advice I could share. So for parting words, it's just the do what you're currently doing well. I think that's critical, and I think sometimes people don't quite get that. Whatever it is you're currently doing, do it well. Don't do it like you are paid to do it. Do it like you are building a foundation for your own future, right? Is the approach I've taken to my work and to my career, right? Because in actual fact, you're building for your future. So if you do that well enough, you will be able to get some of the results that you genuinely want. I can see a few questions have now come into the chat. Okay, so that's. I'll leave that to you, Sualade, to please just coordinate.
Okay, so Chioma Unwabuzo is asking, sir, please, can you recommend books on economics?
Chioma, I may need to get to you on that. However, what you probably want are books that are discussing law and economics. Two key books come to my mind now. We just give you like more than a solid base in this area. The first is Principles of Financial Regulation by several authors in the Law Faculty of Oxford. It's one of my best go-to books. It sets the foundation for financial law very well. So that's capital markets, banking, and finance. And it builds the economic foundations that you need. And then when you see the legal principles, you just automatically see how it makes sense to have those principles, right? So Principles of Financial Regulation by Professors Armour, Enriquez, so John Armour, Luca Enriquez, Paul Davis, I think Jim Lapine was on it, a few such authors. Those authors as well wrote what I think is kind of my best book on corporate law, which is an anatomy of corporate law. So an anatomy of corporate law. Again, fantastic book. Starts off by setting out what corporate law is, and I can see there's a question on what corporate law is really. But if you start off with the first few chapters of that book, it really sets out in the clearest economic terms what you're trying to achieve with corporate law systems, and therefore the different design choices you have in building up corporate law, and just all that really helps you as a practitioner or as a student understand what is going on. So the way I typically say it is, if you understand the why something is the way it is, then it's much easier to understand what, right? So if you understand why you need laws or rules in a certain direction, it's then easier to understand what the rules are likely to be, right? So those two books would be my key starting points. And within them, of course, you have copious references to core economic texts, which you could then pick up and build from.
Okay, thank you for answering the question. Kate Wynn says, please, I didn't join early. Can you please tell us what corporate law really involves?
there's almost no universe in which I'm able to answer what corporate law is in a matter of minutes. But of course, essentially, what it is a body of laws that what corporate law tries to do, in essence, to set out default rules for ordering a nexus of relationships between the different entities that make up the legal person called the company, right? So it sets default rules, and therefore you can usually opt out of them or create rules for your own self, right? But you see the entity called the company or the corporation, it's in economic terms sometimes referred to as a nexus of contracts. What that means is this entity stands in the middle as some fiction, right? And then it contracts with its shareholders through its memorandum of articles of association, contracts with lenders through financing agreements, it contracts with employees through employment contracts, and contracts with contractors and service providers through those sort of service contracts, etc. And so this fictional entity sits in the middle as this warehouse of different contracts. What the management of that entity then does is to manage these nexus of contracts to the benefit of its ultimate beneficiaries, which are its shareholders, right? It's very high level, very weird stuff, talking about it in that sort of abstract. But if you were to read through, for instance, chapter 1 of this Anatomy of Corporate Law that I've just spoken about, it really answers the question, what is corporate law? What's it trying to achieve? And you'll get countless points from that.
Okay, so to the next question by Life Riri. It says, good afternoon, sir. I would really like to know if it is really necessary to do litigation for a period of time before moving to corporate law practice. Thank you. I think you addressed this question.
I did, actually. But I'll just say it's helpful. I wouldn't call it personally necessary, but I think it gives you some tools that you may find useful in corporate law work.
So another question by Meet with Awele says, I came late, sir. Please, can you give pointers as regards academics? Do you think a master's degree should come before practicing or some years into it? Address this question too.
Again, I addressed the question, and it's just dependent on your circumstances, and I don't have bright line rules or principles to give, but your individual circumstances may lead you to believing for yourself that one path is better placed for you than another.
Okay, so I can't seem to share this question, but I can see it here by Chidera Kanayo. Doctor, are there any professional certifications you will recommend for prospective corporate lawyers?
Okay, so that's a tricky one. I don't know if. Well, I mean, so there are a few, right? You have things like ICSAN. That's a certification for chartered secretaries. You have some fairly niche certifications in stuff like particularly when you get into financing and accounting, so ACCA to certifications like that, which I know some lawyers have. It all depends on your particular field. There's some certifications in stuff like negotiation, which is of course much broader, right? Which can then be applied across almost any field within the subject. But I don't have pointers on on specifics. I think within your industry, you're likely to have a few that may stand you apart, which you could then use.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I have checked the chat box and I can't see any questions, so I think we'll be rounding up here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Personally, I've learned a lot and I've got to understand so many tricky things that have been quite not comprehensive to me. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and we hope to have you here again when we have other questions related to corporate law practice and litigation. Thank you so much. We are grateful. Thank you guys for joining. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.